5 bone-chilling accounts of haunting autopsy horror. Woman awakens amidst the unexplained, in the quaint town of Maplewood. Where life seems frozen in a postcard of American values, the unthinkable happened one evening in the unyielding cold of the local morgue. Sarah Monroe, the town's dedicated medical examiner, stared down into the chill of the metal slab. The room, sterile and clinically white, was a stark contrast to the whispers of history that hovered in the air. As she began her autopsy on a local man, the heavy silence was shattered by a momentary distraction. Her mind wandered, perhaps to the comforting warmth of Jack's embrace or their dreams of children. That S when it all went wrong. Sarah's hand knocked over a vial filled with a thick, wine-red fluid. The glass shattered, a sharp sound slicing through the air like a knife. Panic gripped her as her heart raced. She bent down to clean the mess, and in that moment, the impossible happened. The man's eyes flickered open, bright and alive. What was supposed to be an investigation into death had morphed into an encounter of life. Tension swirled in the air as Sarah staggered backward, her breath caught in her throat. The rustle of the sheets and the sharp scent of antiseptic now carried the weight of expectations unraveling. Why was he awakening? She had only ever known bodies as silent. For the first time, the notion of death felt precariously close to life. Around her, Maplewood hummed with secrets wrapped in comfort. But now, the comforting facade began to crack. Shadows formed, stirring with unresolved spirits begging to be heard. And Sarah, burdened with duty, felt the threads of her existence twist tighter with each revelation, each whisper echoing through the dark corners of her mind. The lost veterans, forgotten tragedies buried deep beneath the veneer of everyday life, clawed their way to the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue with the creeping realization that life could resurrect unexpectedly. Sarah found herself thrust deeper into the mysteries of her town. At night, figures cloaked in darkness emerged from the corners of her vision, stirring her to uncover the injustices hidden beneath Maplewood's polished exterior. Jack, with his gentle hands, tried to pull her back, reminding her of the dreams they shared. Yet, as shadows cast by powerful elites slithered closer, their dreams felt like distant echoes begging to be silenced. The community dinner, meant as a warm gathering, twisted into something sinister. Sarah stood at the center, trembling but resolute. She opened her mouth to share the truths of the ghosts who needed liberating, but the frigid air whispered warnings, reminding her that the dead are rarely at rest, especially not when their stories demand to be told. Just as she prepared to bear the secrets of Maplewood, a chill swept through the room, and the reanimated man stepped forward. The tension coiled tightly around her as fear mingled with determination, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the very existence of everyone present. In that moment, Sarah faced the unsettling realization that the choices they were about to make would either reclaim life or spiral deeper into the abyss of buried pain. The air thickened with anticipation as the past beckoned. What would they choose? The room held its breath as all eyes turned to the man who had supposedly crossed the threshold of death. He stood there, barely more than a specter, his face pale and drawn, but life sparked in his eyes. A murmur rippled through the crowd, disbelief flooding the air like an unwanted guest. Sarah's heart thundered against her ribs, igniting the primal fight or flight instinct deep within her soul. "Who are you?" she breathed, though the question trembled on her lips more than it rang with authority. The man, clad in a simple gray sheet, seemed to gain strength as he discovered the audience surrounding him. "I am the truth you buried with me," he rasped, his voice a chilling echo of all the secrets Maplewood kept hidden in their shadowed corners. Gasps erupted around her, a cocktail of fear and intrigue blending with confusion. Jack reached for Sarah, his grip firm but warm, grounding her in the moment but also pulling her back from the precipice of chaos. "We should get out of here," he urged, urgency lacing his words. But Sarah couldn't move. She wasn't just a witness. She was a custodian of the truth, a keeper of stories too long silenced by fear and shame. Her gaze locked onto the maness, searching desperately for answers, knowing deep down that this wasn't merely about him. "What do you mean? What truth?" She fought to keep her voice steady, the weight of responsibility pressing down like a thick fog. He opened his mouth to respond, but just then, the lights flickered ominously, sending a jolt of panic through the crowd. Cries echoed as several townsfolk stumbled back, the atmosphere charged with dread. "Is anyone else seeing this?" A voice rang out, searching for solidarity amidst the panic. More lights blinked out, casting them into a stifling darkness tinged with spectral dread. The sound of a chair crashing to the floor punctuated the chaos, and Sarah felt herself drawn deeper into an unfolding nightmare. "What's happening?" Jack hissed, his grip tightening on her arm. "Something wants to be known," the man whispered, voice almost lost to the growing disarray. He gestured towards the darkness encroaching on them like an invisible predator. "Your past is awake, and it's angry." The tension escalated, and Sarah felt her heart race in sync with the chaos as the walls whispered around her echoes of those who had suffered, of grievances left unresolved for too long. The past was clawing its way back, and it was hungry. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in an ethereal glow. But the man was gone, vanished into thin air. Panic morphed into confusion as the crowd began to disperse, some running for the exit, others frozen in disbelief. Sarah spun around, searching for any sign of him. "Where did he go?" she shouted, her voice barely cutting through the panic. "He can't just disappear like that," Jack replied, but even he was grappling with the impossible as the confusion swirled like autumn leaves in a storm. A group of townsfolk huddled together, murmuring uneasily. "We shouldn't have let her," one voice broke through the haze, filled with fear. "We shouldn't have brought this back." The foreboding words settled over Sarah like a wet blanket, wrapping her in unease. She looked around, every face reflecting a mixture of awe and fear. They had awakened something dark. "Is this what you wanted?" she whispered under her breath, the question echoing in the cavern of her mind. Outside, the wind howled like a beast, rattling the doors and windows. In that moment, Sarah felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, an unseen presence lingering at the edge of her consciousness, urging her to delve further into the abyss. And then the lights dimmed again, plunging them into half-light. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow spiraling across the far wall. "Sarah!" Jack's voice cut through the tension, but she was already moving, compelled by an instinct she couldn't comprehend. "It's not over," she whispered to herself as she stepped forward into the darkness. What awaited them on the other side of that unsettling truth? The darkness enveloped Sarah like a heavy shroud, and she could feel her pulse racing. Her instincts screamed for her to turn back, to run from whatever waited in that engulfing shadow. But the mystery tugged at her, pulling her deeper in, and with every step, she battled the terror wrapping around her heart. "Sarah, wait!" Jack's frantic voice echoed behind her, but her feet were moving without her. She was drawn to an unseen force, that feeling of being watched intensifying with each heartbeat. As she ventured further into the gloom, the sound of whispers floated around her, not just in her ears but inside her mind. Could they be the voices of those lost, waiting for someone to hear them? A shiver cascaded down her spine. She fought to keep herself steady, the air thick with the scent of dampness mixed with something metallic. She caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her vision, a flicker, a shadow darting between the chairs. Her breath hitched. "Is someone there?" she whispered, hoping her voice would serve as an invitation rather than a plea. "Sarah, please." Jack's plea was insistent now, scrambling through the chaos. But just as she turned, the lights flickered sharply back on, slicing through the shadows like a knife. And there he was, the man, his presence shimmering at the edge of the light. He grinned, but it wasn't a smile of comfort. It was a reminder, a reckoning of the unspoken. You need to know, he rasped, his words slicing through the air. This isn't just a haunting. It's a warning. A group of townsfolk had gathered, their expressions contorted in fear and disbelief as they shuffled back against the walls. The air felt electric, charged with an urgency that was almost tangible. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. She was caught between the desire to flee and the need to understand. What do we need to know? The man's eyes burned fiercely. Each of you has buried a part of the past secrets, sins, heartaches. I was taken too soon because of your silence. Now, the echoes of our unresolved pain demand attention, and they won't rest until you face the truth. Jack stepped forward, defiance and fear battling in his eyes. You're saying this is our fault? Some kind of punishment? We're not responsible for what happened to you. With a sudden rush, the lights flickered erratically before plunging them into darkness once more. The crowd gasped. A symphony of anxiety filled the room. Listen. The man's voice grew louder, more frantic, reverberating through the darkness. You must confront the truth. You cannot hide from what you've done or ignored. The veil between the living and the dead is thinned, and with each moment wasted, the weight of your choices grows heavier. It's time to face it. As silence enveloped them, a terrifying realization washed over Sarah. The man wasn't just a ghost. He was a catalyst for everything they had evaded. And just then, a cold wind brushed against her cheek, carrying a chilling message of uncovered secrets and ominous fates. The lights flickered back, but he was gone again, leaving them grasping at air, teetering on the precipice of revelation and despair. What do we do? Jack's voice trembled, breaking the heavy silence that had settled like cement around them. That's the question, isn't it? Sarah replied, the urgency of their situation sinking in. Somewhere between the lost souls and her own buried truths lay the answers they sought. The tension surged, knotting up in her stomach. Outside, the wind howled, as if urging them to act, and a sense of dread pulsed through her. How much time did they have before the darkness consumed them all? Unfolding events stood starkly before her, and for the first time, Sarah felt the undeniable pull to confront not just the mystery of what happened, but her own choices that led them here. But as she prepared to take a stand, a bone-chilling wail pierced the air, sharp, anguished, and terrifying. It was a sound that transcended fear. And suddenly, she knew. They weren't in this alone, and whatever had awakened was just getting started. What would be the price of uncovering the truth? The wail echoed through the room, a haunting cry that seemed to seep into the very bones of the townsfolk. Startled, they stumbled back as the shadows writhed in response. A dark pulse that thrummed like a heartbeat. Sarah's heart raced, a wild drum in her chest as she caught Jack's startled gaze, still reflecting disbelief and terror. Where did that come from? Jack's voice was shaky, and fear knotted his brow. Do you think it's one of them? Sarah whispered, glancing around at the worried faces that surrounded them. The shadows danced on the walls, twisting into shapes that evoked their worst fears. Whatever it is, we have to get out of here, Jack urged, his hand grasping for hers, instinctively wanting to protect her, even as the darkness pulsed with whispered warnings. No, Sarah pulled back, her resolve hardening. We can't run. If we do, we're just burying it deeper. We have to confront it. Confront what? He asked, desperation edging into his tone. A ghost? What does that even mean? The truth, she replied firmly, her mother's voice echoing in her mind, insisting on honesty no matter how painful. She could feel it, a deep-rooted fear shimmering underneath an ocean of buried sorrow. We can't let fear win. As if in response to her declaration, the air thickened, swirling around them and igniting the whispers that seemed to grow more frenzied. Sarah closed her eyes, straining to listen, to understand what the echoes wanted from them. Face it, please help us, the voices wove through her thoughts, mingling with memories of laughter, of love, and of loss. How many had felt the same burden? Sarah, Jack shouted, his voice cutting through her reverie. Look. She opened her eyes just in time to see a figure forming in the shadows, the outlines flickering like a flame on the verge of extinguishing. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, eyes glistening with unshed tears that swam with despair. "Help me," the apparition whispered, her voice a mere thread of sound, tinged with anguish. "I cannot rest until the truth is told." "What truth?" Sarah breathed, her heart pounding as she felt herself being pulled closer. "What do you need us to do?" The ghostly figure trembled, her features distorting with a pain that went beyond despair. "The secret you've kept, it holds the power to forgive, to heal." The words felt heavy, weighted with the gravity of their implications. Sarah's mind raced. What was she holding on to? What shadows had crept into her heart and taken residence there? "Can you trust me?" she murmured, stepping forward. But just then, the room trembled, a deep rumble vibrating through the very foundation of the building. The lights flickered wildly, then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Panic erupted. "Stay close." Jack's voice was a lifeline in the chaos, but Sarah felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just the whispers anymore. It was a storm building outside. They needed to face it together. "What's happening?" Jack shouted, his voice almost swallowed by the rising wind that howled through the cracks. "I don't know," Sarah called back, breathless, fear clawing at her throat. "Listen," a voice shouted. It was one of the townsfolk, and they sounded frantic. "The past is rising. If we don't unite, we can't fight it." They were all in this together, bound by more than just fear. Unseen threads tied them to the history lying like a minefield beneath their feet. They had to break the cycle. "Speak," Sarah cried, the fog of confusion starting to clear. "What do you want us to do?" From the depths of the night came the anguished wail again, but this time, it was joined by others, a chorus echoing their shared pain, demanding recognition. Then, as if in response, a flicker of light illuminated a dusty mirror leaning against the wall, reflecting blurry images of their own faces mingled with despair. "Are we ready?" Sarah whispered to Jack, her heart racing with a mix of dread and determination. With a deep breath, she stepped toward the mirror. Together, they would uncover everything, whether it broke them or freed them. But as they neared the mirror, a chilling laugh echoed across the darkness, sending shivers down their spines. "You think it's just that easy?" The voice wasn't just another whisper. It was a warning. What awaited them on the other side of the truth? The air crackled with tension as Sarah and Jack stood before the mirror, its surface pulsing gently with the beats of their hearts. The chilling laugh reverberated through the room, echoing off the walls, twisting their fear into something that felt alive and menacing. "Who are you?" Jack shouted into the shadowy void, his voice quaking. But the figure of the woman remained silent, her eyes locked onto Sarah as if pleading for recognition. With a deep breath, Sarah reached for the cold glass, fingertips brushing its surface. A shiver raced up her spine. What lay beyond? Was it merely a reflection, or could it pull them into the darkness? "Something isn't right," Jack's voice trailed off, uncertainty creeping into his tone. Sarah stepped closer, feeling the draw of the mirror intensifying. "There's more to this. I can feel it." She glanced back at Jack, whose expression sharply shifted to apprehension. "Wait, what if it pulls us in? What if we can't get back?" he warned, eyes wide with dread. But at that moment, the ghostly woman began to shimmer, her form intertwining with the shifting images in the mirror. "The secrets must be faced. The truth will set you free," she breathed, her voice filled with an ethereal clarity that cut through the chaos. Sarah swallowed hard, the weight of the words crashing down on her. "What truth? What do you mean?" Without warning, an unseen force surged around them, yanking them forward, as the shadows exploded with echoing cries of the townsfolk. The cacophony swelled, immense and suffocating, making it hard to breathe. Jack's grip tightened around Sarah's arm, pulling her back. "Stay away from it. We don't know what it could do," he shouted, but something inside Sarah urged her to push through the fear. "Jack," she whispered, searching his eyes for understanding. "We can't let this darkness win. We have to face it, whatever it is." The woman's figure flickered, the sorrow in her gaze deepening. Only together can you break the chains, face what you fear, she implored, drifting like smoke. And then, with a sudden jolt, the angry wail erupted forth again, reverberating through the room, pounding in their ears until it drowned out all rational thought. The shadows closed in, swallowing the faces around them as darkness thickened, tightening into an oppressive shroud. Then, with a blinding flash, brilliant light surged from the mirror, momentarily banishing the gloom. Illumination poured forward, coiling around Sarah, and she could see the faces of the entire town reflected within, echoing their shared agony, their trapped spirits reaching for release. Together, Sarah, we have to scream the truth, Jack shouted over the din, his eyes fierce with determination. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and exhilaration. The weight beneath her chest began to lift as they stood united, all fear momentarily forgotten. What do we do? She called back, heart racing. Let it out. Let them know, Jack urged, stepping closer to her. They took a deep breath, their voices merging as a single cry, filled with pain, anger, and hope. We know the truth, and we will not be silenced. In that surreal moment, as the wail of despair met their declaration, a silence fell, an unbearable pause. The mirror pulsed with energy, the figures inside caught in a flux, flickering like fireflies. But then, darkness surged back, more powerful than before, sweeping away the light. The laughter returned, smoother and darker, echoing their proclamation. Foolish mortals, you think you can change history? You cannot escape the past. The connection wavered, flaring with violent intensity. The air thickened, and the walls trembled as the shadows coiled tighter, threatening to consume everything. Sarah, Jack's voice was swallowed by the chaos. What do we do? But all she could do was stare into the relentless darkness, uncertainty clawing at her heart. As the mirror cracked, a chilling realization dawned upon her. The truth, the darkness, it wasn't just about the ghosts. The room shifted, bending and warping before her eyes. Would they find salvation? Or would they be forever trapped in the echoes of regret? The darkness encroached, waiting for them to make their next move. Would they flee, or face the truth no matter its cost? And as the mirror splintered further, a shadow emerged, promising an unexpected revelation. A reminder of something they had buried deep. The question rattled in Sarah's mind. What if the past was more terrifying than anything they could ever face? The cracks in the mirror widened, jagged lines spreading like veins across the glass. Sarah felt her breath hitch, panic clawing at her throat. What had she done? Screaming the truth into the void had sent them spiraling deeper into the unknown. And now they were teetering on the edge of something far darker than she could grasp. Jack, her words caught in the chaos, voices swirling like a tempest around them. She could almost hear the whispers of the townspeople, fear and desperation woven into their pitch. The shadows loomed closer, shapes swirling with intent. Focus. We need to stand together. Jack's voice cut through the din, fierce and raw. Sarah locked eyes with him, seeing the determination mixed with terror etched on his face. The truth, she repeated, trying to remember. What was it they needed to face? The cryptic words of the woman echoed in her mind. Secrets had to be confronted. But what secrets? Was it just the past, or something buried deeper within? The shadows pulsed with energy, distorting the room, making it seem like a living entity. She could feel it, the oppressive weight pushing against her chest, urging her to flee. Her heart raced, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she knew they couldn't. Not now. Look, Jack shouted, pointing at the mirror. The ghostly woman reformed amid the waves of darkness, her eyes pleading once more, mouth moving silently, desperate to communicate. Do you see her? Sarah gasped, nodding toward the figure. But there was more amid the woman's shimmering form. Flickers of faces emerged, their expressions twisted in shock and sorrow. Who are they? Jack asked, attempting to step forward, but the shadows pushed back. Victims. They're trapped. Sarah realization washing over her. We have to help them. Help them? Jack's brows furrowed, confusion etching deeper lines upon his face. How can we help them? The truth isn't just ours. It's theirs too. Her voice trembled as the phrases escaped her lips, but she felt the stirrings of courage pushing through the fear. We have to tell their stories, for them to be free. The laughter crescendoed, mocking their resolve, but Sarah stepped closer to the mirror. I know you. You're the ones we have ignored, the stories we swept under the rug. The darkness shivered, almost in response. Together, Jack shouted, stepping beside her. They locked hands, a talisman of bravery against the tempest of despair enveloping them. The insane cacophony swelled, but they drowned it out, voices rising. We remember. You were here. You lived. You loved. You suffered. Their words mixed, reverberating off the walls, igniting something deep within the mirror. With every truth they shouted, faces pressed closer against the glass, shimmering with longing. The figures of the past were reaching out, yearning for acknowledgement. You can't hold us. We will break free. Then, almost audibly, the darkness hissed and recoiled, a striking contrast to the light blooming from the mirror. Sarah's heart soared. Hope threaded through the chaos. But, just as quickly, shadows thickened, billowing outwards like smoke, enveloping them in cold despair. Foolish mortals, you do not know what you awaken, the deep, sinister voice echoed, wrapping around them like chains. Sarah felt that shiver again, this time laced with dread. What had they triggered? Had their boldness called forth something worse? Something that lurked in the depths of the void, waiting for a moment of weakness to pounce? Stay strong, Jack urged, but the pressure was growing, a suffocating weight holding them down. The mirror trembled violently, as if ready to splinter apart entirely, releasing whatever thing hid within its depths. Sarah, we must. Jack's words cut off abruptly as a howl exploded from the mirror, raw power echoing through them, shaking the very foundation of their reality. Time stretched, the air crackling with unpredictable energy. Would they hold their ground or surrender to the dark tide? Would they uncover the truth or be swallowed whole by their own fear? And then, with a blinding flash, the mirror shattered, sending shards flying like daggers. Sarah's breath faltered as she felt a pull, an insatiable urge pushing her toward what resided inside. Was this the end of their fight, or the beginning of something far worse? The darkness loomed, hungry for their choices, while whispers of the past swirled ominously around them, waiting for the next reckoning. The world spun in a vortex of shards and shadows. Sarah felt herself being drawn toward the gaping maw of the broken mirror, arms outstretched as if something invisible was yanking her closer. Jack clutched her hand, trying to resist, but it felt like a vice tightening around them. Hold on, Sarah. We can't let it take us, Jack shouted, his voice barely piercing through the shrill wail that filled the air. It was as if the pieces of the mirror were alive, shimmering with dark energy, reflecting a multitude of memories painful, raw, and trapped beneath the surface. Jack, we have to push back together. Her voice was strained, the pull becoming unbearable. She could feel the truths they had just screamed fading as the shadows began to seep into their minds, filling them with doubt and dread. Could they really help the lost souls, or were they simply inviting chaos into their lives? The oppressive weight of despair pressed against her chest, but amid her panic, a flicker of warmth ignited within her. Those trapped faces, the stories they held, those had to matter. They couldn't let darkness erase them. She took a shaky breath. We need to remember them. Remember, Jack echoed fervently, focusing every ounce of his strength as he squeezed Sarah's hand tighter. We remember. We recount their stories. We can break the chains. As they pushed against the dark tendrils curling around their minds, the shadows screamed in outrage, fighting against the light that began to emanate from their connection. The tendrils recoiled slightly, allowing them a moment of clarity. Sarah, think, who did we forget? What stories have we hidden? Jack urged, forcing the memories to surface. Sarah's mind raced. There was the girl in the well and the couple that died in that fire. They were here. We've heard their cries, She could almost see their faces, glimmers of hope entwined with sorrow. Jack inhaled deeply, a spark igniting in his eyes. Right? The boy who went missing in the woods. The townsfolk murmured his name, but what really happened? That's it. A surge of adrenaline blazed through her. They deserved to be heard, to be remembered. Show them, Jack. With newfound resolve, they shouted together, their voices unwavering against the shadows. They lived. They loved. They fell victim to the darkness. And they will not be forgotten. Each proclamation seemed to push the shadows back, the cold tendrils unraveling, retreating slightly as they continued. The faces on the mirror emerged clearer, reverberating with their forgotten echoes. Each story they recounted ignited the glimmer of light, chasing the darkness further into its corner. But what had once felt like victory began to falter. A low growl erupted from the fractured glass, deep and vibrating. You think your petty recollections hold power? I am the darkness that endures, the silence that consumes. The ground began to tremble beneath them, a warning shuddering through the very fabric of their reality, threatening to swallow them whole. Sarah glanced at Jack, fear rippling through her, but she nodded. We have to keep going. Suddenly, the dark force surged forward again, stronger than before, and shadows pooled at their feet like a living silhouette. The despair returned, cold and gnawing. The reflection of the ghostly woman shimmered, a beacon in the storm, urging them. Sarah, Jack shouted over the din, striking a sudden realization. The stories they need more than just memory. They crave justice. They want their truth exposed. Justice? She echoed, understanding dawning. Each memory wasn't just a retelling. It was a plea for recognition, a cry for the living not to forget the past. We can't only recall, we need to uncover the truths that haunt this place. With one last push, they channeled every ounce of strength, every flicker of fear and hope into their voices. We unearthed the buried truth. The town must know what really happened. The mirror shattered further, sending warmth cascading through the room. The banshee wail morphed into a symphony of voices, a cacophony of sorrow and liberation as shades. Surrounding them began their slow but deliberate ascent. But just as the first hint of victory flickered brighter, the darkness roared, angry and unfettered. You will not silence me. This fight has only begun. The shadows surged, a colliding force, and Sarah felt an overwhelming dread envelope her. Something unspeakable clawed at her mind, whispers echoing, pushing her toward despair. Jack, but before she could complete her thought, another blinding flash erupted from the shattered glass, enveloping the room in an otherworldly brilliance. What awaited on the other side was unknown, but in that moment, Sarah realized whatever lay ahead would change everything. Could they face the name of that monster which had lurked in the recesses of their shared past? Or would they be consumed by the legacy of secrets that refused to die? The blinding light enveloped Sarah and Jack, casting away the dark tendrils that had coiled so tightly around them. But it didn't lift them from the danger. Instead, it morphed the very air they breathed. Time felt suspended, stretched like an unending night. As the brightness faded, they found themselves standing in a twisted reflection of the familiar and eerie replica of their town, where houses loomed taller, shadows lingered longer, and a palpable tension buzzed in the air like electricity. What just happened? Sarah whispered, her heart racing, disoriented by the sudden shift. She looked around, her mind racing to process everything, but all she felt was an unsettling sensation that perhaps they were even further from safety now. Jack squeezed her hand tighter. I don't know, but we need to regroup. This place, it feels wrong. In the distance, shadows flickered between the houses, moving like a swarm of dark shapes. They held their breath, startled by the weight of unspoken histories swirling around them like a storm. Then a figure emerged. A child's laughter echoed from an alleyway, but it was tinged with something sinister, a sound dragging them back to moments they wished to forget. Sarah, Jack. The voice was soft, but it pulsed with a strange familiarity. A young girl stepped into view, her pale face illuminated by a pulsing light that seemed to come from nowhere. It was her, the girl from the well, the one they had forgotten in their haste, the one whose cries had echoed through their memories in the darkest of moments. "Help me!" she shrieked, her eyes wide and terrified. "You must help them. They're trapped. They're everywhere." Sarah's pulse quickened. "We remember you. We're here for you." But beneath her words lay a tremor of doubt. Take this shadow seriously? What if the darkness swarmed them again? The girl approached cautiously, her energy felt raw and desperate. "You have to face it. Face what lies beneath." They wanted justice, but now they desire revenge. "The darkness hungers for your fear, it feeds on your doubt." "Revenge?" Jack muttered, taking a step back, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "What do you mean?" "We thought," but she interrupted, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It was never about just remembering. It's about what they'll do if you don't act. They'll come for you. For everyone." The girl rushed forward, arms outstretched as if to pull them with her. "We can confront it together. Only then can you save everyone." The ground trembled again, this time more violently. Chunks of earth crumbled, revealing fissures that let out ghostly apparitions, faces twisted in confusion and fury, their cries melding into a monstrous roar. This was the backlash of all those lost. Sarah and Jack gripped each other tightly, raw fear coursing through them. They hadn't just awakened memories. They had triggered something much darker, awakening all the souls who longed for retribution. Jack turned to Sarah, desperation in his eyes. "We can't run from this, can we? We have to face it. We have to confront what we've unleashed." Before they could respond, shadows rose like claws from the ground, wrapping around their ankles. The girl cried out, "Run! Save yourselves!" But Jack shook his head. "No, we're not leaving anyone behind. We'll face this together." What remained of their world spun tighter, darkness clamping around them. The girl's light flickered, her face warped with fear and determination. "You need to break the cycle. Find the heart of it." Sarah felt the weight of their choices tighten around her heart. The chaos of the shattered mirror had given them no chance to comprehend what lay in wait. "Heart? What heart?" she yelled, the words barely escaping her lips as cracks opened wider around them. Jack's eyes sparked with realization. "We need to find the source of it all, the darkness." But just as he finished his thought, a gaping maw opened before them, the shadows whispering promises and threats, beckoning them forward. If they stepped into that darkness, would they emerge with the answers, or would they be lost, forever trapped in the stories that cried for vengeance? As they stared into the abyss, Sarah felt a cold dread wash over her, but alongside it, a flicker of hope. Maybe confronting the past could somehow break this curse. What awaited them on the other side? Was it salvation or destruction? And beneath it all, a thought lingered. Were they truly brave enough to confront the deepest fears housed in that consuming reality? The whispers grew louder, wrapping around Sarah and Jack like a cold wind, hissing bitter regrets and unfulfilled cries. Muffled echoes of laughter twisted into anguished wails, filling the air with a stench of despair. The swirling shadows beckoned, promising escape while threatening to imprison them deeper within the web of their past. "Hold on," Jack shouted over the cacophony. He pulled Sarah closer as they stood at the precipice of darkness. "We need to decide. Are we stepping into hell or reclaiming our town?" The girl's light flickered, illuminating the cracks in the ground as more figures emerged from the shadows, faces they recognized from old photographs, from stories once shared over campfires. But these were not the friendly smiles of their childhood. Instead, they wore expressions of pain and fury. Ghostly forms wavered, stretching their arms towards them, their mouths opening wide in silent screams. "Choose," the girl cried, desperation cutting through the air like a knife. "You must face the truth. You have to find the heart before it finds you." Jack's heart raced. The heart, could it be the old church? The one everyone abandoned after the accident? "It might be," Sarah said, uncertainty thickening her voice. "But we can't just run into the unknown without knowing what's waiting for us." Before they could strategize their next move, the ground heaved violently beneath their feet. The shadows surged, dragging them closer to the chasm. With a fierce tug, they stumbled back together, hands locked in a determined grip. "This way," Jack yelled, pointing to a faint glimmer at the edge of the town's reflection. It was the church steeple, rising defiantly against the smothering darkness. "We have to get there. It's our only chance." As they dashed through the twisted streets, the specters clawed at them fleeting glimpses of the lives once lived. Each figure bore a brand of loss, a haunting reminder that they were not alone in this forsaken realm. Sarah's chest tightened at the sight of a familiar face, a childhood friend lost too soon. The figure looked right at her, eyes pleading, but she pushed the sorrow aside. There was no time for grief now. "Keep moving," Jack urged, his voice breaking through the shadow's clutches. "Don't look back." The girl followed closely, her light pulsating rhythmically, revealing a path through the chaos. The cacophony of anguish sounds grew into a steady heartbeat, resonating with the beat of fear assuming the role of predator. Will they reach the church in time? Or will the darkness sweep them back into despair? The shadows seemed to congeal behind them, growing bolder with every footstep. Just ahead, the silhouette of the church began to resolve into view, its door cracked open, beckoning them towards what lay inside. A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's heart, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something awaited them within those ancient walls, something powerful and terrifying. "Do you hear that?" the girl gasped, her expression shifting from fear to exhilaration. "It's calling to you, the heart." "What is it?" Sarah asked, catching her breath, her voice trembling. "Only you can uncover the true darkness. Only you can free the lost." As they approached the church, the air thickened, swirling with intensity. Jack's pulse quickened as they stepped onto the threshold. Inside the church loomed a darkness unlike anything they had faced, a presence that seemed to breathe, pulsating ominously. The shapes around them pressed closer, shadows eager to engulf them. "Whatever it is, we're ready," Jack shouted, stepping confidently into the dim light, but his bravery felt thin against the weight of what lay ahead. "Are we?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide as something from the depths began to stir, a long-buried truth surfacing from the heart of their fears. What exactly was awakening in the church? Could they tap into the heart for salvation, or would it unleash further horror? The air inside the church was dense, as if the weight of every buried truth hung heavily overhead. Shadows twisted grotesquely, swirling around the ancient pews, echoing whispers that flickered like candle flames. Sarah squeezed Jack's hand tighter, pulling courage from his warmth as they stepped forward. "This is it," Sarah uttered, her breath shaky but full of determination. "We'll face whatever it is that kept this town from healing." Jack nodded, his eyes bright with an unwavering resolve. As they moved through the dimly lit aisles, the silhouettes roiled and shifted, their forms barely holding together against the gravity of emotions swirling around them. Glimmers of recognition flared in Sarah's mind as lost faces emerged, victims, friends, shadows of those who had slipped away unmourned. A figure rose among them, a woman bathed in soft light. Her presence exuded warmth despite the chilling fear that surrounded them. "You come seeking the heart, don't you?" she whispered, her voice soothing yet commanding. "But can you handle the truth that lies within?" "Yes," Jack replied firmly. "We're here to confront it. The past won't keep us imprisoned anymore." The woman smiled, but her expression was tinged with sadness. "Then understand this. Before the heart can be reached, you must face the darkness that binds you. Every secret, every whispered betrayal, let them be known." A pulse reverberated in the room as the shadows began to throb, swelling in response to the woman's words. The room trembled, and Sarah felt terror grip her heart. But something deeper than fear began to surge within her, a longing for liberation, for justice. "Speak," Sarah shouted, her voice resonating against the walls, carrying echoes of every lost soul. "We unearth our past and find the courage to share it." As the words left her mouth, the shadows reacted explosively, swirling violently, howling in rage and despair. "You dare!" hissed a voice dark and venomous, drawing energy from the darkness, summoned forth by her declaration. "You will not take what is mine." "We're not taking anything," Jack interjected fiercely. "We're reclaiming what you stole." No more silence. The air shimmered as the figures of the lost began to swirl towards the light, merging into a wall of faces, each bearing stories untold. Sarah felt the pain of betrayal, the ache of dreams unfulfilled, and every whisper flooded into her consciousness. "Speak for us," the voices urged, folding into one broken chorus. "Remember us." "I remember," Sarah cried, connecting their stories to her heart. "I remember the girl who was forgotten in the well. I remember the couple lost in the fire. I remember the boy who disappeared in the woods." With every proclamation, the darkness recoiled, shattering like glass. The shadowy tendrils shrieked, released from the tight grip that had ensnared them for so long. The woman stood strong before the swirling chaos, embodying hope as light began to bolt from the cracks in the church walls, illuminating the ancient symbols of healing and heartache etched into the stone. "Enlighten the truth, and you will find freedom," she proclaimed, guiding their voices. "Join us," they shouted as one, hearts intertwining their pain. "We will rise together." Suddenly, an intense light burst forth, fracturing the darkness. The tendrils began to dissolve, memories intertwining with moments of clarity and redemption. Sarah felt a weight lift. She was no longer just a witness. She was the voice, the echo that would bring forth understanding and reconciliation. As the final shadow burst with an agonized wail, the room exploded with brilliant light. The figures began to ascend, their faces illuminated in gratitude. "You freed us," the women whispered with joy and relief, brightness washing over them like golden rain. In that moment, Sarah knew that the battle was not just about facing the past, but about understanding it, healing it. They had awakened the heart of Maplewood, emerged from the crushing silence, and rewritten their fate. Jack held Sarah tight as the light enveloped them. They were filled with purpose, the lingering shadows fading into whispers of inspiration. Relief washed over Sarah like a gentle wave, knowing their town would finally breathe freely again. Later that night, as they stood outside the church, the warmth of the moonlight bathed them in serenity. The townsfolk gathered, faces marked not by fear but with gratitude, sharing their stories, weaving a tapestry of lost and found connections, healed hearts. "Thank you," Jack whispered as they watched their community rebuild itself from the remnants of sorrow. "Not just for us," Sarah replied, a smile breaking through her tears. "We did this all together." In the distance, laughter echoed, a beautiful refrain that floated on the air, signaling hope, healing, and an enduring bond as they turned to face their town. Sarah felt the last remnant of dread slip away. They had faced the darkness, reclaimed their past, and forged a path toward an even brighter future. And they knew one thing: it was finally time for the town of Maplewood to rest in peace. Don't miss out. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans, this is the moment to show your support.